Hello, this is the introduction to this video. I've been reading some books and I'm gonna talk about them in this video. You know how you have like a lot of thoughts about a book and then you put the camera on and then it's like, who am I? What's my name? Am I even literate? So I'm currently reading LoveStar. About 30 pages into LoveStar and I love this. I don't even know what this is. I have no idea what's going on, but I have thoughts already. This is like translated Icelandic literature and it's some sort of science fiction set in the future, but it's a parody or satire. I never know which is which. Our world, but heightened, set in the future. And it's told sort of like a future history. So far I'm just kind of being told about the world somewhat loosely from the perspective of somebody whom we're not sure is going crazy, is like losing their mind or not. Because of the nature of the world, it's hard to tell if they're losing their mind or if what's happening is just normal. Like, I love it so much. At first I was like, wait, this is so ridiculous, but then I thought about it. I was like, if you told anybody, if you went back even just 150 years into the past and told anybody about anything from the future, that it would seem so ridiculous. Explaining to them just any sort of normal everyday thing that is normal to us, it would seem ridiculous to them. It would seem crazy to them. And this is what this is. I don't know what the plot is, if there's going to be a plot. I'm just enjoying reading this. It's very funny. Passers-by were prepared for anything. So no one paid any attention when Andri sat in a cafe and wept. Andri is who we're following and who we don't know is like maybe losing it a little bit. We don't know. He cried his eyes out in a corner, but few people thought to ask him what was wrong. It was probably Greek tragedy week with his target group, or he could be an advertising trap. Why are you crying? I want a Honda so much. They're such great cars and there's an amazing offer this week. Like another example of like this sort of weird predatory heightened advertising that goes on in his future is this. It was clear that the old friend was a secret host and his conversation was slanted towards his goal of selling an umbrella or insurance. The offer was like a drain and every single conversation was doomed to be sucked down that drain, regardless of what was originally being discussed. Family? How's your mother? She's fine. She's got such great life insurance for the love life. Art. What did you think of Jonas Hallgrimsson's poem? I wonder what sort of life insurance they had in the 19th century. Love life hadn't been founded then. Sports. Good game yesterday. Yes. Poor Gisley. Torn ligament. I wonder if he's covered for that. I'll look him up at Love Life. You're insured with them, aren't you? That's so funny. It's like so silly and ridiculous, but I can see this happening in the future because this stuff happens now. If you've ever had any sort of interaction with any sort of MLM person, you'll know. And also the thing about the conversation being doomed to go down that drain, to circle down that drain. Oh my God, it's like with religious people and men. With religious people, you have you ever had that experience where you think somebody's trying to be your friend? You know, they're very nice to you, they're very friendly, they invite you to things, and then the pitch about God starts and you're like, oh, you were not interested in me as a person at all, you were just trying to recruit me into your church. Wow, thank you so much for adding to my trust issues. And then with like certain men also, when like they're so horny all the goddamn time that every single conversation leads to sex somehow. Oh, your grandma died? What are you wearing to the funeral? Or if you're on a date with them and you're having a conversation, it just has to lead to talking about sex in some way. It was particularly true for the dudes who were like not suave at all, so they were trying to signal sexual interest in you, but they were very clumsy about it and it was very off-putting. Like they weren't sure if I was into them in like a platonic way or not, so they were going about it in a very clumsy way. And also some dudes are just like horny all the time. Anyway, that's what that reminded me of. This is just I just started this. I don't know if the story is going to go anywhere. This might just be, you know, us trying to figure out if Andri is actually like losing his mind or it's so funny. This book has so much to say about not just advertising, but you know, all of the things that come with advertising being predatory and MLM people being predatory. At the end of the day, it's about capitalism, you know what I mean? So there's that as well. I like it. This is fun. I love satire or parody or whatever. What is it? Hello, I finished LoveStar 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. I don't know if I said this in my first check-in because I was sleepy, but this would make such a great movie directed by the guy who made The Favorite and The Lobster. This book is perfect for people who like Philip K. Dick, people who like that sort of surreal, absurdist, black humor, satirical, people who like those sort of stories like Brazil and 12 Monkeys, the work of Kafka as well, and like The Lobster, like I said. Oh my god, if you love any or all of those things, you will love this. This is for you, especially Philip K. Dick. So this story, LoveStar, had the type of dystopian future that I like, where it's our world but heightened and exaggerated, but in a way that still feels somewhat plausible, and like that's a bit scary because like you can actually imagine this happening. I like those type of dystopias. I don't like the type of dystopias with like weird elaborate social structures like the Hunger Games and like Divergent and stuff. I also don't like apocalyptic ones like Mad Max and like The Road and such, you know what I mean? This is what I like. The future world of LoveStar is the type of hellish world that a lot of tech bros and like techno fetishists imagine or think that we want to live in, that we already kind of live in. Like just always plugged in, always available to be advertised to, like screens everywhere, screens in your eyeball, in your brain, unplugging or disconnection being impossible, almost impossible, or akin to death. There are some places in the world that are kind of already like this. And look, I love cool tech. I like science fiction. I am a sci-fi nerd. I get excited when I read about like a new cool gadget, futuristic gadget or something in a book, or see it in a movie or something. I love that shit. Give me a good, totally spies type gadget and I'm happy. But like I'm also wary, and a lot of the tech that these type of tech bros are peddling is not cool. Like it just isn't. Like, do you want a juicero in your house? Remember the juicero? The other sort of heightened element in this story that when you actually think about it is not really exaggerated at all is systems of capital, allowing egomaniacal billionaires to like mold and shape the world according to their whims and desires and needs, or to reflect their particular glitch. An example of this is a privileged white South African man has daddy issues, and now you live in a city where they spent your tax money on useless underground tunnels for cars instead of public transport or improving infrastructure, or like billionaires building windowless dorms, or them all deciding that they know better. They know better than our equally useless elected suits. Just in case it's not clear, what I'm saying is that we are living in a dystopia right now. LoveStar could exist right now. Anyway, things got very silly towards the end, as they often do in these types of books. The absurd and the surreal dials were turned up to max towards the end, and like things were like ramping up. You know, very Philip K. Dick. Very Philip K. Dick. But I was kind of losing interest in reading just to finish it because I wanted to know what would happen. Also, the writing is very dry, which suits the black humor, the matter-of-fact, dry, deadpan black humor thing that this book has got going on. And the humans in this lack a sort of like recognizable or relatable humanity because of the world they live in this book. So the dialogue is often very stilted and like literal. I'm choosing to interpret that as like a literary choice. It could just be because, you know, this is Icelandic, and you know, I don't know a lot about Icelandic people, but in general Europeans tend to write in a certain way, and also because this is translated, and translation often does that to work. It makes it more stilted and literal. So I don't know, could be any of those reasons, but I enjoyed it. The weird dialogue added to the humor. I think it was on purpose because I liken it to something like The Lobster, where the dialogue in that is also very just like literal, like and it's funny. So again, it's funny. I loved the absurd, surreal stuff, some of the elements, and despite the ending, I loved this deeply. This made me think of a question that I've been asking myself for the past, I don't know, since I was born probably, I don't know. And that is, must the world be completely undone to be remade? I think when you start reading into things and you realize just how interconnected systems are, you know, racism, misogyny, colonialism, capitalism, all of that stuff, all of those systems are like baking ingredients, but we're at the cake stage now. And if someone's allergic to eggs, you can't just remove the egg from the baked cake. It's in there. You have to start over. Maybe. I don't know. This book also argues that, yeah, it must be. it must be completely undone. The other thing I noticed in this book, despite this being written by a man, is like some ideas that you'll find in a lot of Western feminist writing from like the 60s, 70s, 80s. I think maybe like philosophy-wise, they're all underpinned by something else. But you see that in the story of the seed. I do not think it is a coincidence who the seed planter is. I love this book because it did everything I love in books, right? It is just a good story. So you can just read this and it be a good story, and it doesn't compromise being a good story to try and be deep. It just is. The depth is woven into the story. It's also funny, genuinely funny. It also has some like interesting ideas and like some just really weird things were going on in this, which I appreciate. And it really made me want to rewatch like those movies. 12 Monkeys is so good. Then I read Stone. I hated this book. I hated it. 1 star. I hate it. Oh my god. Do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of where is this horrible book? It reminded me of Light. I hate this. Hate this. I read a review of Stone after reading this, and someone was like, this took all of the joy out of my life for something along those lines. I'll put it up, and that made me laugh because same.
Sucked all joy from my life. Took a while to get it back.
Oh my god, every time I think about this book I get so upset. And now Stone, we're adding to that list. Light was also released in the early 2000s. It seems like there was a certain era, specifically the early 2000s, in which male sci-fi authors were engaged in a race to the bottom with each other for no reason. Pointless. I don't even want to talk about it. It's a science fiction book. Do you know another thing? I like hard science fiction and I like getting physics lectures in a book, but not everyone is good at it. Not everyone is good at making physics lectures in a book engaging and interesting. The person who wrote this book, definitely not. It definitely was not engaging in this book. Oh guys, someone explaining quantum mechanics to me. That's good. I hate this book so much. I don't have any sort of coherent thoughts. I just hated it. And I hate that I finished it. I have a pretty good DNF firewall. But every now and then a book gets through. You know? Every now and then a book gets through and here I am. Oh my god, awful. Awful, terrible. Girlhood is a cookbook by Cathy. Yes, that Cathy. Cathy the illustrator or the comic character. It seems like there's like a time in the 90s where every celebrity, major or minor, had a cookbook. This is from the late 90s and this is from that era, and it has like your classic 90s sensibilities. There are no pictures of the food in this cookbook. Every now and then you get like a Cathy illustration. I thought they were cute. Listen to the name of this recipe. The name of this recipe is, instead of using the old saran wrap and stiletto heels approach to spice things up, I think I'll try some aphrodisiac asparagus vinaigrette. Huh? Saran wrap and stiletto heels? I refuse to look that up. I do not want to know. Anyway, the recipe itself is just boiled asparagus with the vinaigrette. So I haven't tried any of the food in this recipe book, so I just left this one unrated. It was nice to flip through, look at the little illustrations and her weird names for the recipes. No Exit by Taylor Adams, another horrible, terrible, horrible book. This one I gave 1 star. I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams last year and I loved it. I liked it, and it reminded me of like a slasher, like a little horror slasher flick from the 80s, right? Kind of bad, but like in a good way. This is bad in a bad way. This is atrocious. It has like 150,000 ratings on Goodreads also, and it's like sitting above 4. I don't understand, because this is one of the worst books I've ever read in my entire life. I especially hate this because I'm starting to sour on thrillers. I think thrillers are bad. I think thrillers and romance, I think writers and publishers treat those two genres like the dumping ground, right? Whatever, and people will love it. And apparently they do, because this is so bad. The writing's horrible. And like, I can see where, having read The Last Word, I can see where he has improved, Taylor Adams, as an author, just in terms of the writing and the structure and the character and character development and character actions and motivations. Like, this is horrible. I think the reason why I finished this one is because it's so fast-paced. You just kind of read it, like it gets going immediately, which is a good thing, but like, it's a trap, because this is so bad. The main character is dumb as hell. And she just keeps forgetting stuff. She's like in a very dangerous situation. It's like, oops, I forgot my cell phone and my purse. Whoops, I forgot my cup of cocoa. Also, the racial slurs, excuse me? Sometimes I feel like, white authors get like really excited when they get an opportunity to use racial slurs. Like, yes, so unnecessary. There was no reason for that in this book, for this terrible book. Also, the lack of consistency of the logic in the book. This is supposed to be our world, but like, whatever. This is bad horror, a movie from the 80s world. The child in this is written so poorly. She reads like a 40-year-old woman. It's like freezing temperatures and people are just walking around. Someone has wet shoes walking around outside like nothing's happening. It's so weird. Terrible. Awful. Also, again, the racial slurs. What is going on? I am never picking up another Taylor Adams book again. I do not want to be jump scared by random racial slurs. Frogcatchers is a graphic novel about a man. I gave this 3 stars. About a man who is coming to terms with his own death. The art style is not to my taste, but I didn't hate it. I really liked the transitions. Those were really well done. And I think the surreal elements were exaggerated in the marketing. Like, this was just like a little bit weird. I want melting clocks. Then I read Wild, and this is a 4-star paranormal romance, lesbian paranormal romance. This one, I liked this one a lot because I usually don't like shifter romances, but this one worked for me because it didn't have the things that usually make me cringe when it comes to, you know, shifter, you know, or werewolf romances. Is like the pack dynamics or the Omegaverse and Omegaverse adjacent stuff. Cringe. This didn't have any of that. The romance in this book is kind of the least interesting thing about it. It's like very insta-lovey, but the other things happening in the story are more interesting than that. The other things, of course, being the fact that there's a killer afoot. I thought I didn't like romantic suspense, but I do like it as long as the love interest is not the criminal. I also really liked how this writer like set up the conflict. You can see it coming from a mile away, and that's good because it was set up so well. The characters were set up so well, and you can see exactly what the conflict is going to be and when it's going to happen, to the point where when it was happening I was like, oh, I want to read. This is great. I will say a lot of sex scenes. I feel like this might be, I don't know, I'm speaking from the position of a heterosexual spinster, so I don't know. I feel like it might be an overcorrection because a lot of lesbian romances are like cutesy and twee, so I feel like some people try and like, you know, make up for that, and there might be a little bit of an overcorrection sometimes. I don't know, just something I'm observing perhaps from the outside in. Otherwise, 4-star book. Great. Loved it, especially after No Exit. Oh my god. Then another terrible book I read was We Have Always Been Here. I gave this 2 stars even though I wanted to give it 1 star, but it's a debut novel. It's about too many things, and at the end of the day, I don't actually know what it's like about. I'll get into that. Spoilers for this book, by the way. I'll just give you a quick summary, and if you're interested, bye. Our main character, who is on, this is in the far future, on an expedition. Space travel is kind of ubiquitous, but not really. On an expedition to like a new alien planet to like try and colonize it and like explore it and stuff, but she's in the dark. She's not allowed on the planet, and she's on this ship as a psychologist. She's like very paranoid about things are being withheld from her. She's like anxious all the time, and there's a mystery, like something weird is happening on the ship. People are kind of disappearing, and also there are robots in this world. If that sounds interesting to you, you know, pick it up. I wouldn't recommend that you do, but like, you know, whatever. Anyway, spoilers. So the problem with this book is that there are too many things. There are the robots. There's like, you know, the stuff going on back on Earth, something called the comeback, with like plants taking over everything. Extremely silly. Mystery surrounding the planet and the ship. That was the most interesting part of the book, but then it gets uncovered pretty quickly and you're like, oh. And then there's also, you know, the capitalist overlord, like the one company ruling everything in a very inept way that is just asking for a revolution. This reminded me of like one of my favorite Kiwi YouTubers, Media Zealot. He like lovingly makes fun of these types of worlds and corporations. In like, he has a series, something called Villains Sci-Fi Corporations Too Dumb to Win or something like that, or Villains Too Dumb to Win. Things like the Yutani Whalen Corporation of the Aliens series, and like the Umbrella Corporation of the Resident Evil series, where the decisions that they're making, it's like you are asking for things to go wrong or for a revolution, you know what I mean? Like things like that. That's what this was. So there were too many things, and I was being asked to suspend my disbelief about way too many things. All of the things that were in this book were not done particularly well, honestly speaking. With the robot thing, I, in 2024, do not believe that people are going to be as weird to robots as they are in this book. Human beings will pack bond with literally everything. Any object animal, anything. I find it hard to believe. I'm sure there will be some people, but for the most part, people love their stuff. So there was that. Then I had to suspend my disbelief about the weird plant stuff that was going on Earth. Like, you could have just made it like a believable natural disaster. There were plants with like oxygen traps or something. It was, oh my god, it was so silly. Then I had to suspend my disbelief when it came to what the mystery was on the planet. I'll tell you what it was. Too many things. The other thing is that this main character, this is written in third person, but I was fatigued like it was written in first person, because this main character is so exhausting to be in the head of. She's like very paranoid, anxious all the time, constantly ruminating. Someone will ask her a question and then there'll be like paragraphs of her internal dialogue, and then she answers. It also didn't help that she was dumb as hell. So her rumination, especially when it came to the mystery, it was like you as the reader are like, girl, come on, figure it out. Character driven sci-fi, I can like character driven sci-fi if it's done well. This was not done well. A good character driven science fiction that I liked, Best of All Possible Worlds, Karen Lord, Planetfall, Emma Newman. So it's not me, it's you. Another thing with the writing is that it really felt like none of these people, no one existed or did anything before the book starts. Like, it starts with her in a med bay and then things are happening, but it's like, okay, it didn't feel like these were people who have been on a ship for however long they're supposed to have been on a ship with each other, like interesting crew dynamics and stuff. Speaking of the crew, everyone is childish as hell. They like bully her in a very childish way. It's very silly. Everyone is stupid in this book in a very frustrating way, because they're on a planet and there's like, there's like a weird space-time, interdimensional bendy thing on the planet, right? Everyone knows this except our main character. Eventually she finds out. That's the mystery. We find out very soon. And then weird things start happening on the ship, and like nobody is like, maybe the weird things happening on the ship have to do with the weird space-time bendy thing on this planet. Nobody thinks that. And it's like so obvious. You're sitting there as a reader and you're like, oh my god, watching her come up with all sorts of things in her head, paranoid, delusions. You're watching her walk down the same hallway and experience the same thing over and over again. Oh my god, it feels like I'm walking down the bowels of the ship and it feels like it's changing or whatever. And it just makes for such a frustrating read. That's not an enjoyable reading experience for me. I need your characters in your book to be smarter than me. I want to be shocked by reveals. This is a mystery and I want to be surprised by things I was not. Then there's the stuff with the robots. She's the only one seemingly in the whole world who is nice to these robots. Again, unbelievable, but okay. I don't know, it ends with her being like, I guess I'm a robot too or something along. I don't know. I think that's what the book was about. And that brings me to another point. What is this book about? Like, at the end of the day, because the bad guys in this book are people who are trying to rebel against this evil mega corporation. Those are the bad guys. The message of this book is just like, enjoy your indentured servitude, your lifetime of indentured servitude, and then maybe eventually they'll set you free if you kill enough people for them. That's the message of the book. What was the author trying to say and do with the robot thing? I don't know. I really don't know. I think that's another problem. Like, what were we doing? The other thing about this main character is she was so bad at her job. She's Dr. Park and she's supposed to be the assistant psychologist on the ship, but she's so bad at talking to people. Like, just having a singular conversation. Somebody comes to her to talk to her and she immediately starts antagonizing him. I'm like, what is going on? Where did you go to school? Where did you get your doctorate? Also, oh god, the science communication bits were awful. They were really bad. Like I said, in stone, it takes a special talent to be able to, explain scientific concepts. They were not done well in this. Whether it's like a made-up science, Greg Egan has a book in which he makes up a fake science, but he's good at explaining even his fake science that he has made up. Forgot what the name of that book was. Pretty good book. Here, I was like, what is happening? This was just not a good book. 2 stars. I will try another book by this author because I think this was just debut novel blues. To end off on a high note, I read another Grace Draven book. One of my favorite romances is Grace Draven's Radiance. It's so good. This one was A Wilderness of Glass. Also, I gave this 4 stars. Radiance is like a 4.5. This is a short book, but it's very slow paced. The romance in a fantasy world between a human and a merman. This was just a good story. Like, it wasn't a good romance. It was, but it was just a good story, just a well-told story. Reminded me of T. Kingfisher's books. Reminded me of Surrendering to Scylla. Like, just just in the tone and like the good storytelling aspect, and the romance being like a cherry on top, you know, it just reminded me of those books. Great, loved it. Finally, a good book. Anyway, that was that. It's obviously February is not over, but I am taking a break from reading for a while because these 1-star books, I feel like I need to recalibrate my DNF filter, because there's no way. How have like 3 horrible books slipped through? Anyway, that was that. I'll see you in the next video. The next video is going to be about the African book of the month, and that's Wizard of the Crow. I'm excited to talk about that book.